my name's Lisa. I'm 16 years old, and 3 months ago, I started my own protest where 3,000 people showed up. But what's more interesting about that is I started it completely by myself with no money or no followers on TikTok, nothing, just me, my brain, and my Chromebook. So here's a little beginner's guide and some tips and tricks on how to start a protest because I think I needed it, so I hope it helps somebody. If you're going to start a protest, the first thing you should know is its purpose and what you want to come out of the protest. So if you want like administrative change, or if you want to like put on a show and make sure people know what you're talking about, but also just like what it means to you, because you shouldn't be starting a protest for the wrong reasons. Like I've seen people start protests for college apps. You should not be starting a protest for your college application or to show off or to look impressive or to be performative. You should be starting a protest because it's something you genuinely care about. So for example, for me, I've always been very outspoken against the Trump administration. So I decided to start my very own No Kings protest in my town, which was very difficult, but also pretty fun. Purpose is also super important because it helps you figure out like the format of your protest. So it's very different if you're making a walkout versus a sit-in protest. There's very different things that you have to organize. So I really recommend just thinking for a second how you want it to be set up and then going through with the rest of these steps. By far, one of the most underrated parts about starting a protest that people seem to ignore a lot of the time is location. Now, there's a lot that goes into location. Sometimes protests are very defined location-wise. Like if you're starting a protest against a policy at your school, for example, then do your protest at your school. Why are you doing your protest at the library? That makes no sense. Or if you're starting a protest against, water pollution, you should be doing it like near a lake or something instead of at your school. It just doesn't really make sense. Now, a lot of protests don't really have a location set for them. So this is where you need to be strategic about where you're starting your protest. And this even goes towards the other ones. So I really recommend trying to find a main road to do it on with a sidewalk. Make sure you protest on a sidewalk. But make sure you're on a main road, and the reason why is because you've got a lot of visibility, so more people see you, but also a lot of times people will just join the protest when they see a protest. A lot of times people will just walk in, grab a sign, and join the protest because they don't know there's a protest going on. So if you're on a main road, more people will see you, which means you'll probably have a higher turnout. This also means if you're going for like a school that has multiple entrances and one of the entrances of that school like is on a main road, I recommend protesting on the main road and not like the tiny side road that it also connects to, if that makes sense. Same with like libraries, parks, things like that that would typically have multiple entrances. Make sure you're smart about what entrance you're protesting outside of. Now, the very big thing with location that everybody seems to forget is parking. So unless you live in like New York City or Chicago or somewhere that's super walkable, most people are gonna need a park. So make sure you have that parking situation like locked down tight. Now, if you're protesting at like a school, a community college, a park, something like that, typically your parking situation is not as dire because they're public buildings, so they can't really tow you. However, a lot of private buildings will tow you if you do not ask for parking permission. So another thing I recommend is if you're on a main road, so for example, I led a No Kings protest on M59. If you're from Michigan, you know what I'm talking about. But we had asked a local church, if you know like churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, all of them, right? A lot of them, if you talk to them, especially the more progressive ones, would be more than welcome to loan you your parking lot as long as like their religious service is like not happening that day. So I really recommend like hitting one of them up and emailing them and seeing if they'd allow you to park there. Now, if you're scared to talk to people, trust me, I am too. And this is another technique I recommend. You can find a like grocery store off the main road. Like I started one protest and there was like a big plaza of like a Target, a Culver's, a McDonald's, a Home Depot, all of that, right? A big shopping plaza or like Menards or something like that. Like huge Walmart, Myers, huge shopping plaza. They can't really differentiate between the people who are protesting and the people who are shopping. So if you're too scared to go talk to like one of the religious people, because that is a smart idea, I will say, but if you're too scared, and you're gonna have a smaller turnout, just go park in a grocery store parking lot and then protest outside the grocery store, like on like the parking lot, like outside the grocery store. they'll never be able to tell. But you don't want to get towed, and that's a really big thing. Deciding where you're going to put your protest, also make sure there's a lot of parking for your protesters. Now, how are you gonna get people to go to your protest? This is all about engagement. Now, I'm really bad at social media, in case you can't tell. So, social media, I tried it. It's not my thing. Do I still post on social media about my protests? Yes. But here's what you're gonna do if you have no clue how to use social media at all, and just make sure you're getting some people. So, first of all, obviously, if you have a school protest or something that's like within your community, make sure you like put out flyers and like talk to people to get them to come. But if you're just one random girl like me who decided to go start a protest, make sure you register it online. Like register in my protests online with No Kings, Indivisible, and Mobilize. Put your protest on Mobilize, okay? Because if you put it on Mobilize, people are going to easily be able to find it, and like people who often go to protests will just have it go into their inbox. I also recommend registering for Indivisible, but especially Mobilize. Put your protest on Mobilize, and people will just see it in their inbox, and a lot of them will just come to your protest. So it's a very easy and sure way to get people to come. Highly recommend it. The other thing I recommend doing is talking to other community organizations that kind of support the same thing, if you're able to, and be like, hey, I'm protesting about this. Do you guys want to join in? And a lot of times they'll say yes. A lot of times they will. If they don't, it's okay. It's okay, Riley, I'm Joy. Like, you'll be fine. I promise you, you will be fine. The other great thing about Mobilize, by the way, don't expect everybody who registers on Mobilize to come, but a lot will. But the great thing about Mobilize as well is the people who have registered on Mobilize, you can send emails to. So if you have like a big group of people coming, even if it's at your school, I really recommend like having them all sign up through your Mobilize event listing, because then you can just send information out all at one go without having to remember everybody's emails, and it collects an email list for you too. So if you want to start more protests, you can easily get their emails to go send. Okay, I'm sorry, that part was wrong. It's actually the fourth part, but I don't feel like redoing it. But anyway, now about time for my favorite part, which is engaging people. One of my top tier tips for engaging people is bringing extra protest signs. If you are starting a protest, make sure you have at least 15 extra signs, right? That are like kind of generic, so you can reuse them if you start more protests, right? But a lot of people will come in without even planning on going to a protest. They'll just drive by and be like, oh, there's a protest, I'm gonna go protest, right? And we love that energy, but they need signs. So make sure you have like 15 signs ready to go in your car. Now, another cool way to do this that I did at my No Kings protest that really helps engage kids specifically is if you get like Sharpies and markers, and make sure you have some like cutout poster boards and do make your own protest sign. Kids love that. They love that. And if you have things to hand out too, like I handed out little American flags, great thing. Now also, sometimes organizations, like I know for me personally, I'm from Michigan, so Rigged My Vote came. A lot of them will start tabling and canvassing, and you want to have some of them come in too, because it just helps the atmosphere. I also recommend playing music. Make sure you play music. So personally, I had this bad boy that played like hype, but like angry music, like angry hype music, because it got people more motivated. And on that same line of thought, right, make sure you have a microphone or a megaphone or both. Personally, I had both, because I ran a little community sing-along of This Land Is Your Land, which is very fun. I highly recommend just doing something that works the crowd. Make sure you have chants ready. I also recommend having people speak at your protest, especially if it's a smaller protest, because it gets more people interested in coming. So for example, I interned for a school board member, and I had him come and speak. I had my brother come and speak. If you're like, even if you're just a group of kids starting a protest, people just speak, because it inspires people to do more in your community. Now, if you advertise your protest enough, or your protest gets enough traction, sometimes people will literally hit you up. Like, I'm not joking. I was organizing my No Kings protest, and then suddenly my state representative was like, hey, can I go give a speech at your protest? And I was like, oh, okay, yay. So that also happens. So try and get people to speak at your protest, and make sure you just keep the crowd engaged as possible. As the organizer, you probably won't, especially if it's a larger protest, you probably won't get a protest that much. It's mostly for everybody around you, because you'll be working the crowd and going up and down and making sure that like everything's safe and sound. but highly recommend. Working the crowd is one of the most fulfilling parts of a protest. So, oh, how did I miss this? So, back to the Mobilize thing. What I did on one of my protests using Mobilize was I sent an email saying, hey, everybody, if you can, either deck out in red, white, or blue, or wear inflatable costumes, kind of like what the people in Portland, Oregon were doing. And people showed up. We had a lot of those, and it makes you seem more human. So I recommend, one, don't dress in all black. Okay, make yourself seem as human and presentable as possible, but I kind of recommend, like, making the little clothing theme. It gets everybody very much, like, into the spirit if everybody's in the same thing. So, like, I decked out in red, white, or blue. Here's a picture of me. Woohoo. But we had people with, like, a ton of, like, inflatable costumes, and it made more people join, number one, because they're like, oh my gosh, what is this? We're so excited. Like, we also hate Trump, right? It uplifts the attitude. If any press comes in, they can't say that you're doing bad things or you're, like, violent, because who's violent in an inflatable costume or in bright red, white, or blue? Okay, this is actually part 5, but now safety. Also, check with your city real quick and make sure that there's no, like, protest, like, things you have to fill out, because sometimes you have to fill out a form. Sometimes you might need to go to the city or over to not have to fill out a form, but if you have to fill out a form, go fill it out beforehand. Personally, my town didn't have any, so I was set and clear, but just check and make sure there's no protest permits you need. But anyway, safety, make sure you have 911 on speed dial, because sometimes people get violent. So the first protest I ran on No King's Day, I ran 2. Somebody tried to ram their truck into the protesters, and on the second day, there was this group of guys who kept on driving around and around the shopping plaza, shouting slurs at everybody, and they tried to beat up my brother. So obviously, 911 was called. If somebody's trying to engage with you that's from the opposite side, don't interact, just call the police. Or please, just let it be. Don't engage. Now, another really big safety thing is if you're the protest leader, I recommend wearing, like, a neon vest or something that says leader or something of that sort, so then people know where to spot you. So then people across the protest are like, oh, who's the leader? It's her. Exchange your number with anybody who could ever need it. So if you're partnering with a church or a synagogue or a mosque or whatever, make sure they have your number, make sure everybody has your number, and also make sure that you stay on a sidewalk so then you don't get ran over by a car. Make sure, too, that it's not too cold, not too hot, and make sure that it doesn't rain. Check the forecast, please. I beg. Because once it poured down rain during my protest, and it was not pretty. So, yeah, make sure you have a megaphone that is easily accessible so then you can yell things across to the other side in case safety information is to be, like, announced. And if you're able to get a backup plan, highly recommend that. If you need somewhere to evacuate, especially if you're in a city. I feel like people think that protesting in a, like, suburban area is dangerous. It's not. Okay, that's, like, propaganda. So unless you're in a, like, big city, I feel like for the most part you don't really need, like, an evacuation plan. But if you have a mental one, that's good. So I completely forgot to add this into any section, but there's not really much you have to do prior to the protest. Just make sure you visit the protest site at least once prior, and also show up to your protest at least 30 minutes, if not an hour, prior to when the protest starts, just to make sure that you have your lay on the land, you know what's going on, and that you're there to greet people and tell people where to go. But anyway, that was a newbie's guide to starting a protest. So basic wrap up in case you didn't pay attention to the last 10 minutes. Make sure that you have a good purpose, you have your protest on a main road with parking, put it on Mobilize so that people are easily able to find it, preferably put it on social media and, like, talk to people, but Mobilize will help with that. So send out the Mobilize link as well and have people register online so then it's easy for you to track who's coming and send out notifications. Stay safe, make sure that you already know what you're doing, you're prepared, go to the protest site beforehand, and make sure that you know how to work the crowd. So have speakers, have things for people to do, and I promise you're gonna do great. It's not as hard as it looks. It's really not as hard. I feel like I thought that it was so hard, and then I just registered a protest, pulled up, people also pulled up. So just go easy on yourself because you got this, I promise.